one color painting. It almost looks like it could be it's a felt tip marker. So sometimes, and I've used them, they're really good. Sometimes it's really good to do a value study with a felt tip. They have artist felt tips that'll give you a light value, a mid-tone, and a dark, or you might just need only two felt tips, a mid-tone and a dark, and use the white of the paper for your light. And it forces you to only use two values. You don't, or three values. You don't end up trying to, fudge and get more values in there, which tends to make a mess. So keeping it just to three values that the felt tips force you to do can be a really nice thing. I think that Pete did a nice job there. And I think for the most part, Pete did a good rendering of this boat. I don't see anything wrong. I think that the drawing is accurate. Okay. Pete, I think your rendering is good. I think that it's, as far as accuracy, I think everything is working out pretty good there for you. But it seems to me, Pete, you could do something a little bit more to create that excitement, that mystery, that engage the viewer a little bit more on this particular one. So how can you do that? There's a number of ways. I tend to use soft edges quite a bit. I think if you lost an edge over here, that would create a little bit of that mystery. The viewer could finish that on out. Also, I'm thinking that possibly even underneath this dark part of the boat here, if you let that if that were to be kind of wet and just let it run on down a ways, any of those things that that push it more into a design sense can engage the viewer a little bit more and excite them a little bit more. Of course, I think the trees are fine. You've been doing fine on those for a while. But my inclination was probably right over in here. So this would be a good example of a painting that comes into a show and the judges would say, or judges that think similar to me might say, everything is right. Everything is really good here. But push it more. Give me a little bit of a lie. Engage the viewer more once again by losing some edges, pushing color a little bit more, stretch the boundaries of your interpretation a little bit more. Yes, this is the one that was done with the brush. And Virginia, I think this is really quite nice when you consider all the drawing is just with a brush and not with pencil structure underneath it first. That's quite remarkable. I think that the bridge is drawn very accurately, representationally, and the trees are fine. This is a nice presentation from just brush painting and no pencil work. I think that what I might do is two things here. Let's join. These are all the same right in here. So let's join a couple of them, make a couple of them a little more solid. Basically, Virginia, all from this piece right in here. Your pieces are all the same size. Let's join them a little bit there. And the second thing is don't forget that your objects have this reflected color. You've got that happening here in the water, but this would really be nice if you had some of this greenish color working its way right into some of the bridge, more than what you have. And even some of the brown reflecting up into here. So we get these colors going back and forth, and it creates a nice harmony, but it also tends to make things look more realistic. You don't have to use realistic color to make the painting look realistic. It's just the action of getting the reflected color back and forth. And how do you do that? A lot of times I'll do that is that as I'm doing the bridge, I'm doing the green foliage in the background, and they just automatically run together, bleed together. Then I come back and I pick out the bridge a little bit more. But if you're not doing them as aggressively as that, running them together at the beginning, then just remember when you put this green in, say, okay, I'll put the green, and it's very wet. Okay, we'll drop a little burnt sienna in there. And as you're doing the bridge, you got this nice brown going across here. And then you rinse out your brush and pick up some of the green you might have and just put it in there a little bit. Or you might say, the answer might be, I didn't know I was going to have green down or what color I was going to have down here. All I had was the bridge when I started. All right, you can still put that in, but it's going to create a lot of visual excitement if you just get some opposite color in there. You could have used the blue. It didn't have to be the green, just something on the other side of the color wheel. This is a nice solid expression of color. You didn't overwork it. You've put down your paint about right. It's a pretty solid painting. What I appreciate on this one is that in your neutrals down in here, which tend to go a little bit on the gray flat side, but you've worked them because you haven't overworked them or over layered them. This still works very well. This neutral grade color that I tend to tell students to stay away from, but you've carried it throughout your painting. It works pretty well. You've got an area of dominance. This is a little bit oval shaped. And if you remember in my painting, I kind of pulled out a little light spot off to the left. I don't think I quite finished it up. Just put another cloud in here, a little bit, very light value, just to break up that oval feeling. It's kind of a minor point, but
okay.
That I might do. And this one right in here, it's not as good as this. This is nice. It's going now a little bit too flat and black in color. Think about having a little more color in that on that shadow side, even though the photo doesn't help.
Okay.
You know, you might like to look at Milton Avery's work. He was in the beginning of the modern art movement, and he would see these big patterns in the sky like this of the sun. And,
Yeah.
really got our art world to think in another direction. So, and then I think also some of George O'Keeffe's work has these big patterns.
Okay.
Yeah, notice also, now something I didn't catch earlier on when I was looking at this, your restraint is really nice here on the little strokes you have down in here. You have it near the area of dominance to support it, and then less and less as you go on out, it gets flatter. That's good. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Pretty solid painting. Okay, so this is glorious. And Gloria, it looks to me like this has been done on masa paper, and you haven't stretched it out yet. Gloria's becoming more bold with her colors. I like that. What I might do a little bit differently on this, and after you flatten it out and mount it on something, if this were my painting, I might take some neutral colors of the combination that you've already got and just run them over just some of these on the outside edge so that these become a little bit stronger, right? And then I also would probably allow some of that red and yellow to run right down into this pot, just a little bit. I find that this overlapping of colors helps to harmonize the painting and also helps to make it look a little more realistic. So how would you do that? When you were putting this red on and you haven't done the vase yet, allow that red to just run on down, that yellow just to run right on down into here. It takes a little bit of courage because things feel like they're out of control, but it does help. Yeah, I think it looks like masa paper, M-A-S-A, or it could be a paper towel.
And is that harder to get the color to run?
No, you get it wet and work on it while it's wet. And
I like the effect.
Yeah, it's nice. I made a joke there. I said, or it could be a paper towel. In that case, she's in trouble. But look, I want to pick out one flower I think it's really beautifully done. Look at this one right here. Look how the red has worked its way in there, and it's suggested. That's really nice right there. Right. So this is John's, and John, this is really nicely done. In fact, I'm going to send a gold star over the waves here to you, because this is the few times,
well, thank you.
One of the only times I've ever said to you, you need a little more detail.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know.
I tried not to put in detail. I really made it.
Effort. Yeah, you did. You just about nailed it here. You see these couple of these branches right here? I think they're really nicely done. If you had just one or two more right in here, I think it would be fine.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, this is the restraint that I've been wanting you to shoot for, and to stop early so you don't overwork that.
Oh, that was so hard to do, to stop early.
Yeah, it is. It is hard. You might put a wash over this so it's not quite the distraction.
Yeah.
But once you do that, you don't keep saying, "Oh, I can do this. I could do that." I won't. Okay. You could have a little yellow down in here. That would be nice.
I thought of that.
But this is
later.
This is the simplicity here is what we've been shooting for. So it's very nice. Okay. So that's what that's kind of your goal here, is to get me to say, you need a little more in this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gorgeous painting. Wow.
Thank you. Thank
Did
you.
it come out a lot faster than your previous ones, John?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it did. I've done this one before. This was off a photograph I took, but it's been a while ago, and I just got the photograph out, looked at it, and then did it without, I did the value study, and then and just set the photograph aside and didn't bother with it anymore. And
Well,
it came out very fast.
There you go. I mean, sometimes we just have to try different things, and then something really works. And maybe that's kind of the ticket for you, is get that value study down, get locked in your mind what you want, and then set the photo aside.
Yeah,
that
that works quite well.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
and-
ways to do that way.
Yeah, John, this is Peter. Think how many more paintings you could have done.
Well,
If
I
you
tend to
painted
paint,
them all set.
yeah, I tend to paint fairly fast anyway, but that doesn't mean I paint well fast all the time. So
All right, let's take another look here. Look how the tree gets kind of lost up here, the
Mhm.
stronger values and heart, and then it gets lost. That's really
Mhm.
cool. That's nice. But notice also, I think the handling of the figures is some of the best here. Notice how this just tends to drift off into here. This figure goes into that, and then there's a little light spot going here. These figures sit back very nicely into the environment that they're supposed to be. And it's because of these hard edges. You're tying them in, excuse me, the soft edges. You're tying it into the environment around it. Right. Susan's. Okay. Yeah. Hi, Susan. Good morning. Susan, I do have a question for you on this. Did you use masking fluid for your lights here, or did you paint around them?
For the really intense ones, and
Yeah,
then
really.
I kind of lifted paint for the softer ones. I wanted to show depth.
All right.
I
So
was
you-
I really
that's
liked
good.
those branches.
Yeah. So you did use masking fluid on these right in here.
Yeah.
All right. That's good, because I was going to say, and I know you're careful in your painting. If you were going to say, no, I painted around them, I was going to say, well, there's a lot easier way. And I'd tell you about masking fluid. All
Well,
right.
thank you.
Yeah. So what you're achieving, and you mentioned the point of depth, and that was one thing that I wanted you to work on a little bit, is that you had a little bit of a tendency to not get your middle ground in. You had your foreground and then your background, but no middle ground. And what that tends to look like is that you have a background on your painting, and then if you paint your foreground on cellophane and just put it over the top of it, it's doesn't have that sense of gradation to depth. And I think that you're doing a little better job on that, because I can see that as your branches go back, they get a little grayer and a little bit softer. In fact, what you could do, since we're talking about showing depth here, what you could do is take a real light wash of the blue and go over just a couple of these that are the ones you did with the masking fluid, and that will then help that go back a little bit. Maybe some of them back in here. This looks like this is forward. Maybe a couple of these back in here, and that'll give you a little bit of that middle depth, kind of like you did right over here in the bottom left side here. That'll give you that depth, since we're talking about that. That's a little bit of a digression, because the main thing I wanted to point out for you is that this shape here is a little bit awkward, being that it's really close to the center, and it's symmetrical. It's a V shape, but what's accentuated that is that it comes out like that too. It's just really important for you to have that kind of I mean, let's say pretend it's a commission, and someone says, this tree meant so much to me when I was growing up. I really want this tree in here. I want it, I want the focus on it. And it's in this tree, you go into the woods to find out it's got a perfect V like that. I mean, how do you deal with that? Well, what you might do then, just to mitigate the feeling of that, is have a couple of these branches going over one of these, like this one right here. Continue that across, where you start to break up one of them, so one of them is more dominant on one side, and that helps to get rid of that feeling of uniformity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question
Yeah.
about I was really having trouble with perspective because it's just like white. And I don't live in a big snow area. I live in Portland. I ended up lifting part of the shadow on the bad tree.
Yeah.
Because that just looked totally off. At least that I couldn't get it to be flat. It was being all floaty.
Yeah.
I mean, flat perspective wise. I couldn't get it to be horizontal.
You couldn't get the feeling of it going back into depth, you mean? Back?
Yeah, with a shadow coming out horizontally.
Yeah, that would pop it forward. And you're right. Even though a shadow on this tree is darker right here and harder edge as it comes out from its source, if it's backlit like you've got here at the dog, so it's backlit, yes. But you have a severe design problem if you do that, which you recognize here, and that would pull this whole shape forward because of the awkwardness and the uniformity of that shape, and then you got that hard edge there. Yes, that would project it forward. So I think that you wisely made a decision to say, I've just got to let that shadow go, and so that tree sits back, and that's good. What I would probably do also is I'd probably lighten up a little bit of the corners here on that, so it's not quite so hard edged, and it would go back.
Okay.
All right. Good job.
Thank you.
This is Pam's. Pam, I know you live down there in an area where you can do more plein air than I can do up here, and I know that you've been sending in some plein air ones. Just out of curiosity, is this a plein air painting?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, good. I mean, it's a very nice painting. Nothing wrong with it. There's a couple things I might just suggest that I think could bump it up another level, and that is be a little more aggressive about letting this orange color just to come down in here a little bit.
Okay.
You know, I know sometimes you see it when you're out there painting, and sometimes you don't see it. I think, but we know it's happening. I mean, that's the fact, is we know that it is happening, even though sometimes I can't quite see it. That light's coming down, hitting that, and it doesn't come straight into our eyes. It comes down here, and then it bounces into our eyes, so that it pulls that color there. But I think what it would do is it would harmonize this area a little bit more. It would also make this blue that you have down here that doesn't have the orange in it more intense. It doesn't take much there. I'm also thinking, Pam, I like this shadow right here. You see the warmth that you have in that shadow? I think that's very appropriate for the type of rocks that you have here. I think that I would have encouraged a little more of that warmth in this over in here.
I was trying to make that go back because it goes back, and it.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's talk about that. So this comes forward, and that's the back side.
It goes back more.
Yeah. You know what? It's just like this juts out, and then it has a little gap in here, and it goes back. Okay. I think what I might do is still encourage more of that warmth in there.
Okay.
But a little harder edge here would probably pull this out from it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's no light. It's all in shadow over there.
Yeah.
And the only reason I painted like 95% of it outdoors, but when I came back, I really wanted to emphasize the light. Yeah. Because that was what was so beautiful about that cliff, was the light.
Right.